thank you all for coming. I appreciate the opportunity to talk to you all. Just to give you a little bit of background, I worked for Social Security for 27 years, and so I've had every question that you can ever think of asked of me throughout my career. And since I retired 20-some years ago, I have been consulting and doing classes like this. So I'm happy that you're all here, and I have a question for all of you, or a couple of questions. How many of you are currently paying into Social Security from Teachers' Retirement System? How many of you are paying into Social Security? Okay. So how many of you are not paying into Social Security? Okay, not as many. How many of you have paid in and not paid in? A little bit of both. Okay. So I've got a good audience here to make sure that I answer your questions. So my job here is to answer your questions, but because we have a large crowd, what I want to do is table the questions to the end, and I will stay as long as I can to answer questions with everybody in the audience, and then after y'all start back up again, I'll still stay for a couple more minutes in case somebody has a question that didn't get a chance to ask me. So make sure you have your questions. Don't forget them, because it's important that we address them while we're here together. So before I even go any further, I also want to say that my job is to make this as understandable as possible. So I'm going to use lots of examples, and hopefully that will help as well. But one thing I want all of you to do, if you have not done it, is I want you all to go online and get your Social Security statement on a regular basis, at least once a year. And I would do it probably not in January. I would do it in February or March, because that's when Social Security should have all of your earnings that you paid Social Security taxes on from IRS by then. So it will be more up to date. So always on an annual basis, get that statement. And I put a screenshot of, this is the home page for Social Security, and you just go where it says Plan for Retirement. And that's what we're here to talk about, is what are we going to do for retirement. So when you go to and click on it, you'll create an account. How many of you have already gone online and done this? So you know that you can do it. It's, once you have the account set up, you can go online any day of the week. So it's just the first time you have to set things up, and then you can go to your account. So it used to be that we had a long statement that had, it was a 4-page document. Now it's just 2 pages. It's an abbreviated document, but it still has all of the information that you need to know what Social Security is going to pay you, or at least get an idea. And I'm going to explain how to read it as I go through the presentation. So what my plan is, I'm going to first talk about retirement, but then I will talk about survivor benefits, and I'll talk very briefly about disability as well. And when I talk about retirement, first everyone needs to know who gets a check, who gets the check, and then how in the world does Social Security come up with that money amount that's on that statement that I'm going to refer to. And the last thing, and this is the question I get more than any other, when should I start my checks? When should I start them? Should I go ahead and take them at 62? Should I wait till 67? When should I start them? And I will give you an idea of how you're going to go through the process of making the decision for yourself, because I can't make that decision. You will do it on your own. So just like with the Teachers' Retirement System, you're going to have to work under TRS for a certain period of time in order to be eligible for a check. Well, Social Security says the same thing. In order to get a Social Security check, you're going to have to work and pay into the system for at least 10 years and have what is called 40 credits. So, every year, if 10 years, you get 4 credits in a year, then you're going to have your 40. So when you get your statement from Social Security, if you're wondering, do I have my 40 credits or not? It's very easy to know if you have them or not. I'm going to go back. I know I'm not supposed to do this, but if you have a money amount on your statement and it says when you're 62, you're going to draw X amount of dollars, it means you have your 40 credits and you will get a check. If you don't have your credits, your statement will say something like, you have 32 credits and you need 40. So the easiest way to know, do I meet the criteria to get a check someday? Look at your statement. If it says you have enough credit, if you have enough credit, it will show a benefit amount. Now, not only do you have to have your 40 credits to draw Social Security, you're going to have to be old enough. So you may be able to retire from here at 55 or 60, but you can't draw Social Security until you're 62, and I'm talking retirement benefits now. In addition to that, while we're together, I'm also going to tell you that there are times a retiree may have a family member that has never ever worked that can receive on your record. So we'll talk about beneficiaries that can receive on your record. So do I have anybody in here that has gotten their statement and it says you don't have your 40 credits? Do I have anybody that does not have their 40? Anybody? Y'all have been hard workers then, so you're all going to get a check. Good job. Good job. If I have somebody in my class, and it's very often that I'll have a handful of people that may not have their credits, they always want to know, well, if I don't have my credits, how do I get them? And all you have to do is work and earn a certain amount of money and you'll earn 1 credit. This year, in this calendar year, the amount is $1,730 to earn 1 credit. So if you don't have enough credits, you have 32 credits and you want to get 40 to earn 4 this year, it would be $6,920. So every year that amount goes up. And let me see, I tried to put in the slides, most of the slides, and I apparently didn't do it for this particular slide. The credit amount will go up next year, and it'll be $1,730 to earn 1 credit. So in my presentation, I am going to talk about some values that I am going to have a 2023 slide and a 2024 slide. And I apologize, I did not have the 2020. Oh, I did have here it is. There's the 24. Goodness sakes, I was better than I thought I was. There it is. So here it is. So make sure that if you may have your credits, but you may be married and your spouse doesn't have their credits. If they need to get them, this is how much you need to earn. So all of you know, the parents, I didn't have anybody raise their hand and say, I don't have enough credits, so I assume everybody's going to get a check. The question is, how in the world does Social Security come up with this money amount? And I, once I retired and started doing some consulting, I worked for a company where I would go in and teach pension plans for people like Coca-Cola, for the federal government, Cox Enterprises. And their formulas were really easy to teach. Social Security, not so much. So I'm just going to be real honest with you. Their formulas are very, very complex. But I'm going to give you some basic information that will give you at least a rough idea how they come up with the money amount. And the most important thing for me to tell you is that they're going to use your highest 35 years of earnings. Not your high 5, not your high 10, but your highest 35 years of earnings. So some of you in this room have always worked and paid into Social Security. And you have probably, or by the time you retire, you may have 35 years of earnings. Some of you in here have paid into Social Security, but you have worked under one of the county systems that do not pay into Social Security, so you have a lot of zeros. So in that case, because they use 35 years of earnings, then your benefit is going to be based on however many years of earnings you have, but they're going to average in a lot of zeros. So in my case, I worked for the federal government for 29 years. I have 29 years of zeros, but I've worked and paid into Social Security before and after I worked for the federal government. So they don't care, it doesn't have to be continuous earnings, they just pick the highest 35. So I want you to, that number, just keep that in mind, that's part of what they do. But what they do is they take those 35 years of earnings and bring them up to today's dollars. So when I was working at the Dairy Queen making 90 cents an hour, I'm a lot older than you all, a lot older than all of you in this room, 90 cents an hour, and I was really happy to have that job. Not that I got free ice cream, but at least I had a job making 90 cents an hour. What Social Security does is when they look at those earnings, they bring them up to today's dollars. So rather than be 90 cents an hour, it may be equivalent to $3 an hour or something like that. So they adjust it, they call it indexing, they bring it up for inflation, then they select the highest 35 years, and then they come up with an average. When I'm at Coca-Cola teaching this class, I do not even go through the formula. I'm going to tell you that right now. I don't go through the formula. I think it's immaterial. Most important thing you need to know is 35 years of earnings. But when I'm talking to teachers' retirement employees, I have to talk about the formula because some of you are going to have a different formula used than what I'm going to show you now. So this is the formula. Oops, this is the formula for 2024. And I don't want you to even worry about the formula. I don't even care about the formula. This is what I want you to worry about. If you work for a government entity, which all of you do, Georgia Teachers Retirement System, and you're going to receive a pension from Georgia Teachers Retirement System, and you didn't pay into Social Security to earn the pension, then a different formula will be used for you. You will get a check, but it is called the Windfall Elimination provision, and a modified formula will be used for you. So how many of you have worked under TRS and have never paid into Social Security while you've been working for TRS? Okay? So the handful of you that just raised your hands, assuming you have your Social Security credits, when you get your statement, I want you to take half of what's on there. Because if you look at the formula that I have up here, the regular formula on the right says for the first monthly average of $111.74, they're going to use 90%. But for those of you that never paid into Social Security while you were earning your pension with TRS, they're going to use a 40% value. So I want you to take half of it. So if you get your Social Security statement and it says you're going to get $600, it's going to be closer to $300, okay? And the reason why I'm here and the reason why Mike and his team invite me to come talk about this, I don't want you in your retirement plan planning on getting the $600 when you're going to get only $300. So that's why I have to make sure that you understand it. Now, for those of you that have kind of a hybrid, you paid into Social Security part of your time under TRS and part of the time not under, and part of the time not paying into Social Security while you're with TRS. You have both. If you have 30 years of substantial earnings in which you paid Social Security taxes on those 30 years, then the normal formula is used for you. The regular formula is used. If you have between 20 and 30, then it's a graduated amount. But if you have less than 20, then it's going to be the 50% that I just mentioned. So if we go to what is substantial earnings, everybody always wants to know, well, Cindy, I worked for 30 years. I worked in college. I did some part-time work. I've always been paying into Social Security. Even though I'm not paying into Social Security right now, you have to have 30 years of substantial earnings. And I actually brought some handouts that are out front. And so at break time, if anybody is under the windfall and you want one of the handouts to see what the amount will be, what is considered substantial, I have this handout. If you do not get a handout, you can go to Social Security's website and get it from there. But you have to see, do I have substantial earnings? Well, I put 2024 number down here, by the way, because the handouts have not been updated by Social Security yet to include 2024. So I put it on there. But if you look at your Social Security statement, remember I told you it's abbreviated, right? Well, it does. If it's abbreviated, it's not going to show all of your earnings. Look at how they've lumped them together at the top. So you don't have a breakout. So what my job is to make sure not only do I try to explain as much as I possibly can, I want you to have as many tools as you possibly can. So if you want to get your all of your breakout of earnings, remember when we went to log into Social Security to my account? If you look at that page down at the bottom, there's a place that says review your full earnings. So all of you will be able to go to review my full earnings, and then it gives you a breakout. So they'll give you the year by year. I had to go to my own account, and I didn't want you to see that I was making millions of dollars, that TRS is paying me millions of dollars. So I didn't put my own earnings up there, but it will come in and show you exactly what you earned. So I decided when I was putting the presentation together, when Mike reached out to me and he said, send me your slides, I thought, this is so confusing. I need to make sure that those of you that are in here, you're going, does the windfall apply to me? When does it or when does it not apply to me? So this is when it applies. When all or part of it, of your TRS pension, was based on work not covered by Social Security, then the windfall is going to apply to you, okay? Even if it's just part of the time, but it'll apply to you unless you have 30 years of substantial earnings. When does it not apply to you? The exception I just gave you. And if you are still working under TRS and you are full retirement age, which is probably for a good number of you in this room, and I'm going to put the slide up in just a minute, is 67 years old. If you're still working under TRS because you love your job and you don't ever want to retire, right? I don't see any hands going up. This is me. I'm never retiring. If you are still working under TRS and you're full retirement age, you can draw your Social Security check and the windfall does not apply. So let's pretend I'm with TRS. I'm a lot older than all of you. I just told you I'm 71. I'll be 72 a week from tomorrow. I can't believe I'm that old, but that's what my birth certificate says. So it must be true. So let's say I'm a teacher under one of the school systems that does not pay into Social Security. I have my 40 credits. I'm still working. I love my job. I get my Social Security statement. It says I'm going to draw $600 a month. But that blonde girl, she told me it was only going to be $300. Since I'm not getting my pension, I'm still working under TRS. I'm 67. I already told you I was 72. I could be drawing my Social Security check right now, and it would be $600. The moment I retire, though, it would drop to $300. So that's one time it does not apply. And it's not uncommon that I have people in my class that are well beyond retirement age and they're still working. So that's when it does not apply. And another time is it does not apply in survivor benefits. So if I was married and my husband's Social Security, maybe I was married to some slacker that never worked, okay? Let's just make it a good story. So he never ever worked. And my Social Security statement says I'm going to get $600, but I'm only getting $300 because I didn't pay into Social Security. If I die, I'm worth more dead than alive to him because he would draw the full $600. So it does not apply to survivor benefits. So I wanted to be very clear of when it does apply and when it does not apply. And for those of you that have questions, just write them down because I'm going to get back when we're at the end. We'll entertain all of your questions. So now we know basically when we get our statements, how much our Social Security will be Windfall doesn't apply, then that statement is fairly accurate. If the windfall applies, then it may be about 50%. Just keep that in mind. So we have the statements, and then we look at the statements, and they have a lot of different ages on there. You know, when should I start my Social Security? So if you wait until your full retirement age, and full retirement age depends upon your year of birth. So you all know how old I am. My full retirement age would have been 66. I assume that the good number of you in this room, probably most everybody in this room, your full retirement age is 67. So if you wait till those ages to draw your Social Security check, there's no reduction for age. But if you want, and then if you're not working at 62, you can actually start your checks at 62, but they'll be reduced. So if I started my checks at 62 rather than 66, which is my full retirement age, if I started at 62, my check would be reduced 25%. For those of you that have a full retirement age of 67, if you start your Social Security checks at 62, the checks are reduced 30%. So I want you to have an idea that you can start them early, but they are reduced. Now you can start them anywhere in between 62 and 67, and the reduction it depends on how old you are. For example, if I had started my checks at 65 rather than 66, my check wouldn't have been reduced 25%, it would have been reduced 6.7%. So it just depends. It just depends on what age you are when you start it. But when you look at the estimate, I got the estimate, I believe, here for you to see, they have the range clear up to age 70. And there's a reason they have it up to age 70. If you reach your full retirement age, and let's assume it's 67, every year you delay taking it beyond your full retirement age, the benefit amount is increased 8%. So you say, I don't want to start my checks at 67, and you wait till 70, you would have a 24% increase in what your check would be if you wait till 70. But if you look on your estimate, again, they give you different ages so that you can see what the amount will look like. So the question is, now I've got my estimate, now I know how to read it, when should I start my checks? And I'm going to share with you what I've always said the entire time I worked for Social Security, all those 27 years. And I had to go through a lot of training in order to take applications for retirement benefits. And we were pretty well programmed with the following. If you're not working when you turn 62, you should go ahead and start your checks. And the reason we said that is there is something called a break-even point, an age in which you attain that it was either to your advantage or disadvantage to start your checks at 62 or to wait till full retirement age. So I'll use myself as an example. I could have started my checks at age 62, okay? But it would have been reduced 25%. Remember I said 25%. I could wait till age 66 to start my Social Security and not have any reduction whatsoever and get a bigger check for the rest of my life. But I just gave up 48 checks, right? Gave up 48 checks. So the question is, how many bigger checks do I have to get to make up the 48 that I didn't take? And I've done this math over and over again, and I don't care if your retirement age is 66 or it's 67, it still comes out about the same. 78 years old. So when I worked for Social Security, I retired in 1999. When I worked for Social Security, people weren't living much beyond 80. So why wouldn't you take your checks? But now I don't feel comfortable in saying that because we're living so darn long. So everybody in this room knows somebody 90, right? Everybody knows somebody that's 90. So now I don't say that. If somebody asks me this question, and I just had this question asked of me of a friend of mine yesterday. He and his wife wanted to know when they should start their Social Security. So I get this question. Anybody that knows what I have done for a living, they always call and ask me this question. When should I start my Social Security? And this is the very first question. There's 3 questions I want you to ask yourself to make that good decision. And the first question is, are you working when you turn 62? Oops. I apologize. I threw one extra slide in here. For those of you that don't want to take my word for getting 50% on the statement and the windfall applies to you, there is a calculator online that you can use. And like I said, I wanted to give you as many tools as possible, and I forgot I had slid that slide in there for y'all. And I would encourage you to use it, but you're going to have your earnings. You know that statement where I said you could review all of your earnings? You're going to have your earnings to plug it all in. So it's a little bit time consuming, but they do have a calculator. So should I start my checks at 62? The first question is, are you working? And the reason I ask, are you working? Social Security has a limit of how much you can earn and draw a Social Security check if you're under full retirement age. So again, for most of you in this room, 67. For me, it was 66. The earnings limit this year is $21,240. So if I have anybody in this room that's 62 or 63 or 64 years old, and you're working, and I know they're paying you probably $200,000 working for TRS, you don't need to file for Social Security because they're not going to pay you because you're earning well over the limit. Every $2 you make above that, $1 of your Social Security is held back. The limit next year, and I'm going to go ahead and put this slide up so you can see what the earnings limit, since this is December, I felt it was beneficial for you to see the numbers for 2024. So the earnings limit next year is going to be $22,320. Again, every $2 you make above that, $1 of your Social Security is held back. So the first question, as I said, is, are you working? And if your answer to me is, yes, I'm working, my second question is, are you earning decent money? If you're only making $10,000, you could still you could still receive Social Security. So the first question is, are you working and how much are you earning? And that will drive me to a second question. So if you say, Cindy, no, I'm not working, or Cindy, I'm only making about $1,000 a month, then my second question is, do you need the money? So who am I to say, if you need this money, of course you need to take it? I know individuals that don't have pensions. All of you in this room are very fortunate because you're going to have a pension. A lot of people do not have pensions. And a lot of people don't put money in their 401ks or their 403bs, so they don't have investment income, and they need the money. If you need the money, by all means, take it, regardless of your age. But if you say, you know, Cindy, the house is paid off, I've got my TRS pension, then I have a third question. How is your health? If you're not going to live much beyond 78 years old, why wouldn't you take that money and enjoy it? Now, there's one exception to that. If I have an individual that has a spouse that has no Social Security or very low Social Security, and they could benefit from your higher benefit, I may encourage them to wait, even if they have a little health issues. So I think that there are three very, very important questions to ask yourself to decide, when should I start? Now, I want to go and talk about this earnings test for just a moment, because I know that your school systems end, not at the end of the calendar year, they end in June. So the question is, well, maybe I work and I retire after this end of the school year, and by the end of the school year, I've made well over the $22,000 limit. And I guess I don't need to file for Social Security. And what I need to stress to all of you, because of that, there's a monthly test for the first year you retire. So again, I'll use myself as an example. Let's say that I'm a teacher and I am making $60,000 a year. And I retired June 30th, and by June 30th, I've made $30,000. So it's over the limit. So I'm thinking, well, I'm going to have to wait till 2025 to file for my Social Security, even though I'm 63 years old. Well, the first year, there's a monthly test. And any month that you're earning under the monthly limit, and all they do is take the annual amount and divide it by 12. So next year, the amount is $1,820 a month. If I'm earning less than that, then I could receive checks for the rest of that calendar year, even though I made above the limit. So I want to stress that to you as well. Now, when you reach full retirement age, you can have unlimited earnings. I already said that earlier. You can make $1 million and you can draw your Social Security check. It does not matter. The year you reach full retirement age, though, it could be that you could receive for some months that you weren't 67. There's an annual amount the year you reach full retirement age, and it's almost $60,000, so it's a substantial amount, $59,520 next year. So if, let's say my birthday is in June, and remember my salary is $60,000, okay, $60,000. So in those 6 months, I'm going to earn $30,000. It's under the $59,000 limit, so I could actually receive checks for January through June. But I would be receiving my check early. Remember, if you receive it before full retirement age, it's reduced. So if I started in January, I'm going to have about a 3.5% reduction for taking it early, and that reduction stays with me forever. But you could get those checks for those months as well. Once you reach full retirement age, you can make as much money as you want. It does not matter, okay? So now I've given you an idea of who's going to get a check. I've given you an idea of how Social Security is going to come up with the money amount. I've given you an idea of when you should start receiving a check. And now I want to talk about your family, okay? Because sometimes I have individuals that have family members that can receive on your record. So I'm going to start with spouses. For all of you in this room that are currently married or have ever been married, you have a spouse that is potentially eligible on your record, and they're potentially eligible you're potentially eligible on their record. Did I say the same thing twice? I hope I didn't. So if you were married and you're currently married, you have to be married at least 1 year in order to receive as a spouse. You also have to be at least 62 years old or older, or have minor children under the age of 16 in your care. If you have gone through a divorced spouse can also receive on your record as long as the divorced spouse was married to you for 10 years and they're currently unmarried. If you have your own Social Security, though, you can't receive on your spouse's record if your own Social Security is more than half of theirs. So I know I've just said a lot of words here, and if you don't mind, I would like to use an example. And I have asked a couple if I could use them as an example because it makes more sense. So I asked Chris and Laura if I could use them as an example. And who works for TRS, or do both of you?
I'm retired already.
Oh, you're the TRS person. Are you?
We're both TRS.
Okay. Oh, wow. Well, let's pretend for a moment. Do you pay into Social Security, or have you paid into Social Security? Okay. How about you, Chris?
Yes.
Okay. So you don't have any Windfall, is that right? Okay. Neither one of you have Windfall. Okay, good. So this is good. So I've got Chris and Laura, but just for my example, I'm going to say in this case, Laura has never worked. She's been a stay-at-home mom. She's never paid into Social Security, and she doesn't have to pay into Social Security to get a check because she can receive on Chris's record. She's been married to Chris for at least a year, correct? So she can draw on Chris's record. She is married to him for at least a year. And let's say, Chris, your Social Security check is going to be $2,000. Laura has never, ever worked. She can draw $1,000 because she has never paid into Social Security. She can receive 50% of his amount. Now, I'm not reducing anything right now for age. I'm just making it simple for myself. Now, Laura has worked, and Laura has paid into Social Security. So because she has worked, if her own Social Security is more than that $1,000, she can't receive on his record. You only receive on the higher of the two. So Chris receives his $2,000. Lauren's never worked. She receives $1,000. Now, let's say before you married Laura, you were married to, and I know you're sitting here with him. What's your name? Pardon me?
Vicky.
Vicky. Let's say you were married to Vicky, okay? And I know she's sitting next to this guy. Is this your husband? Well, let's just pretend you're the boyfriend, okay? Let's just pretend you're the boyfriend. So Vicky's never paid into Social Security because when she divorced Chris, she got a really good attorney, and she gets so much alimony money she's never ever had to work, okay? So Vicky, when she turns 62, she says, I think I'm going to draw Social Security on Chris's record. So she goes to the Social Security office. She was married to him for 10 years. She's not married. She's just dating this gentleman sitting here. So she can go ahead and draw on Chris's record. Chris draws his $2,000. Laura draws her $1,000. Vicky draws her $1,000. One wife does not take away from another, and none of them take away from Chris. Okay? So that's how spousal benefits work. Now, I know this is a stretch, Chris, so I want you to use your imagination. You were married to me. Okay? Chris likes older women. Okay? He got tired of older women, so he married Laura, who is much younger, but he was married to me. So remember, I worked for the federal government. And remember I told you I had 29 years of zeros? So I get a pension that I didn't pay into Social Security. So I'm not married. I go into the Social Security office and I say, well, I was married to Chris for 10 years. I don't have my credits with Social Security. I want to receive on his record. And when I go in and tell them I want to file on his record, they're going to ask me, do you receive a pension? I said, yeah, I get a big old fat check from Washington, D.C. every month. And then they're going to ask me another question. Did you pay into Social Security to earn that pension? The answer is no. And they're going to tell me because of that, the government pension offset provision applies to me, and 2/3 of my pension offsets my spousal benefit. So if my pension was $3,000, 2/3 of it is $2,000. It wipes out my spousal benefit. So all of you in here that are not paying into Social Security, the government pension offset could apply to you. Now there is a couple of exceptions to that, and I want to give you the exceptions. Oops, I didn't put a slide. Okay, I'm going to tell you the exception. If you worked and did not pay into TRS, and part of your pension is based on not paying into Social Security to earn the pension, the government pension offset will not apply to you if the last 5 years that you were under TRS working, you were paying into Social Security. So remember when I asked the question, do I have some of you that have worked and paid into Social Security and that have not worked and paid into Social Security? So if I have someone in here that they started out their career under a system that did not pay into Social Security, and then they transferred to another school system and they're paying into Social Security, and they have for the last 5 years, then the government pension offset provision does not apply to you. Now, I also left some handouts out on the front desk for the government pension offset as well. So I want to stress that because I don't want anyone to be expecting to receive on your spouse's record because you've never paid into Social Security and you're thinking, well, it doesn't matter, I can draw half of their amount. The answer is no, you're not going to. So in my case, I could never receive on my husband's record, never, ever. Not in life nor in death. So I'll get to survivor benefits in just a moment. So it's a very, very important provision to know that there are times that spouses can receive, and that's very important to know. But there are also, it's very important that you know if the government pension offset provision applies to you, that I don't want you to plan on that benefit, okay? So, I'm not done with Chris. Okay. So not only does Chris have all these wives out there, he has a love child. Sorry, Laura, but he has a love child. So if any of you in this room have children, I hope that by the time you retire, they're grown and you've got them out of the house and you've kept them out of the house. That's our plan. But occasionally I talk to individuals that still they've had a second or third marriage and they have children, or they could have a disabled child. So if you have a child that's under age 18, or a child that is are disabled and became disabled prior to the age of 22 and they're unmarried, they're potentially eligible on your record. A child receives 50% of your amount. So if Chris had a love child out there that was 15 years old or 13 years old or whatever age they may be, as long as they're under age 18, they would receive 50% as well. Chris draws his $2,000, Laura draws her $1,000, Vicki draws her $1,000, and the love child would draw $1,000. Now, when there are children involved, there is a cap on that. So don't think that everybody's going to be drawing that $1,000. So there is a limit when children are involved. Not ex-spouses, but children, there's limits on it. And I bring this up, I always want to make sure I cover children's benefits in addition to spouses, because now and again I'll have somebody that does have a young child, or they may have a disabled child, and I want to make sure that you file for benefits. And I had somebody recently that I spoke to that was going to wait to draw their Social Security. They were 62, and they were going to wait to draw Social Security at age 67, but they had a disabled child that was going to draw a substantial check. And in that case, it didn't make sense to wait till 67, because the child would receive a check as well. So it's very, very important that I always mention it. So we've got children taken care of. Now, unfortunately, Chris, you have to die. I got to knock you off here, okay? So I've just been talking about Chris and his family, and everybody's alive. Now, Chris dies, what happens to this money? Does it change? Do they still get it? What happens at death? So if you are married at the time of death and you've been married at least 9 months, your spouse is potentially eligible for a surviving widow or widower's benefit. If you are divorced, if you have a divorced spouse, they're also potentially eligible, again, if they were married to you for 10 years. And this check is paid earlier. It's paid as early as age 60, a disabled widow or widower as early as age 50. And if you remarry, and you remarry after 60, it does not terminate your survivor benefit. So if you get married at 48 and you have a subsequent divorce or your spouse dies, then you have the potential eligibility again. But if you marry after age 60, it does not count at all. I don't know why, but remember, Chris was drawing $2,000. And Laura was drawn $1,000 and Vicki was drawn $1,000. At death, the survivor benefit is dependent on how old the widow or widower is when they start the check. If they are full retirement age, they receive the full amount. So if Chris died receiving $2,000 and Laura is already 67 at his death, then her $1,000 increases to $2,000. Vicki's, if she's full retirement age, Vicki's $1,000 goes up to $2,000. The love child gets 75%, so they would get $1,500. So that's what survivor benefits are. If you take them at 60 or anywhere before full retirement age, they are reduced. So a widow or widower at age 60 would get 71.5%. But I could have a widow or widower sitting in here right now today, and you're already 60. If you're working, the earnings test apply to survivor benefits as well until you reach full retirement age, so keep that in mind. So I always have to bring up survivor benefits because you need to be proactive to get them started. So Laura pays into Social Security. And remember, I said likely you're not going to draw a benefit on Chris's record because his Social Security, half of his is less than your own. But at death, if his is the higher amount, you would switch to his. But you have to be proactive to start it. They just don't automatically bump it up. So make sure that if you're married, but also the government pension offset applies. So when my husband Phil died, I wasn't drawing on his record because of the government pension offset. At his death, the government pension offset still applies, so I'm not eligible on his record. Now, 2/3 of it offsets that benefit. So if your pension is low, if you had a small pension, it could be that you could receive something, because that's how much the offset is for the government pension offset for survivor benefits, okay? As well as, the 2/3 is what it applies for life benefits as well. Now, there's one last check that I have to mention for survivor benefits, and that is the burial payment. Social Security has a burial payment that they pay only to a surviving spouse at the time of the worker's death. And it does not matter if you're drawing TRS or not, and you didn't pay into Social Security, you can still get this $255 burial payment. Just to put this in context, I went to work for Social Security before some of you were born in 1972. When I went to work for Social Security in 1972, that amount was $255 then, and it has never, ever gone up. So I don't want you to get excited about that $255, but I do know that it is payable. It is payable. So when you look at your statement, and I want those of you that may have minor age children or disabled children, I always want you to look at your statement because it also tells you what the survivor benefit would be for a child. So it's not only the widow's or widower's benefit, but for your children. So make sure you look at that statement. It's a comprehensive statement. So the last benefit that I need to mention is disability. And I hate to start off by saying this, but I have to. Social Security disability criteria is very hard to meet. And if I've heard it once, I've heard it 1,000 times. You have to be on death's door to draw Social Security disability. And I say you don't have to be on death's door, you have to be really basically unable to work. So the first thing is you have to work and pay into Social Security to get disability. And you must have what is called recent work. And what they look at in the 10 years before you become disabled, you have to be paying into Social Security at least 5 of those years. So if you're not paying into Social Security now and you haven't been for 10 years, but you do have your credits to draw a retirement check, you may not be eligible for disability because you don't meet that 5 out of the last 10 years. Also, you have to be under full retirement age. So if you become disabled at 70, you're not going to draw a disability, you're going to receive retirement benefits. The third criteria is you have to have a disability that is expected to last at least 12 months. A temporary disability, you will not be approved on it. If you're going to get well in less than 12 months, they'll deny your application. And the last criteria, and this is the hardest of all, you have to be so disabled to work that you're unable to do your last job and basically any other job based on your age, education, and prior work history. So you may not be able to do what you're currently doing, but if Social Security says, well, you could go work at McDonald's even though you don't want to work at McDonald's, they'll turn you down. If you have a loved one that has filed for Social Security disability and they have gotten turned down, I encourage you to have them appeal the decisions because a lot of times the judges approve them. So make sure they go through that process. It is a very lengthy process, but make sure that they do. And the statements that you get also tell you what your disability would be. And if you don't have that recent work criteria met, it will show that you're not eligible for disability. But the Windfall elimination provision applies to the disability benefits as well. So keep that in mind. Unfortunately, and I hate to even mention this, but unfortunately, every one of you in this room will pay federal taxes on your Social Security. because all of you are going to receive a pension. The only people that do not pay federal taxes on Social Security are individuals that have adjusted gross income, modified adjusted gross income, which is on your front page of your tax return. If it's less than $25,000, then you don't pay federal taxes on it. For couples, that's $32,000. Because you will receive a pension, it's going to make your Social Security taxable. Not all of it's taxable, but up to 85% of whatever your Social Security is could be taxable at whatever tax bracket you're in. We are very fortunate to live in the state of Georgia, and if you remain in the state of Georgia in retirement, Georgia does not tax your Social Security check. So that is a benefit that we all get. Georgia's a real retiree-friendly state, so that's a good thing. And the last slide, before I start entertaining questions, is to give you Social Security's contact information. I have given you a lot of information, but if you need to reach out to Social Security, I want you to go to their website first. There's lots and lots of great information on it. And if you need to go to the office or you want a telephone interview, call and make an appointment. And be patient. Be patient. Because sometimes it takes a long time for them to answer the phone, or they'll call you back. And I know when Phil died, I called to file an application on his record for the lump sum death payment. And the waiting time was like 3 hours. So they said they would call me back, and they did. So I was happy to see that they did have good customer service.
Hello.
Hi.
You had mentioned that if at 62 I apply for my Social Security benefits, one of the three questions you'd ask a friend, should I go ahead and take it at 62? And your question would be to me, are you working? What if I'm working as a 1099 person?
Great question, and thank you for asking it. So the question is, what if I don't get a W-2 form, but I am self-employed, so I get a 1099? So when you are self-employed and you file your taxes, there'll be what is called a Schedule SE, where you show what your gross wages were, and then it'll show your net profit, your net. So if your net income exceeds the $22,320, so it depends on how much your profit is. So for wages, W-2, we look at your gross wages. But for self-employed individuals, they're looking at your net.
Okay, I'm just going to follow up just to make sure we're clear. So I am a teacher with COP schools, okay, and I plan on retiring when my husband retires, but I'm not retirement age. Okay, so at 62, I would be eligible to go ahead and apply for Social Security.
Right.
And then if I said I sold real estate or something on top of that, so that still applies to what you're saying.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right.
And then I have one more question.
Okay. Oh, but I want to follow up with one other thing since you've asked that question. When Social Security looks at that earnings test, they're only looking at wages and self-employment earnings. So if you're taking money out of your 403B or a 401k, or you had rental property that you received rental income from, they're not looking at that. They're looking at, do you have a job, whether it's as an employee or if you're self-employed. And I apologize for interrupting you, but I wanted to make sure I mentioned that.
Thank you. And then my last question is, we've gone on the Social Security website and we've figured out how much it will be at 62, 66, 67. If up until this point we thought it was 66 was our full retirement age, and then it comes back that it's actually 66 and 10 months.
Right.
That 10 months, how much of a difference is that? What percentage is that? Or is the what they're showing us on the website accurate?
What they show you on the website is accurate. So they take all of that into account. So the question is, I've been talking about 66 and 67. What if it's 66 and 10 months? The Social Security statement is accurate. They take that all into account for the reduction factor. Great question.
2 questions. quick. We do have a son who's disabled, currently gets SSI.
Okay.
How would getting Social Security affect the SSI?
So and let me explain what SSI is to everyone. If you have a disabled child that's over age 18 and they've never worked and paid into Social Security, so they don't get a Social Security check on their own, they're potentially eligible for what is called Supplemental Security Income, or SSI, which is a needs-based program, meaning he has no income, he or she has no income, so they're eligible for an SSI check. Because it is a public benefit, if they become eligible for Social Security on your record or your husband's record, if the Social Security is more than the SSI check goes away. Now, they would maintain, as long as they're drawn as a disabled adult child, they would maintain their Medicaid, but the SSI check would go away. Recently, I talked to somebody that had 2 disabled children, and they were both drawn SSI, and it would wipe out the check, but they were real concerned about the Medicaid, and it does continue. It does continue. Okay.
To follow up with that part, and I'm sorry, this is probably more personal needs to be, but with the SSI benefits, so his would be larger than the SSI, so SSI goes away. SSI was capped because as he's working, he's just working a little bit, and part-time, they take away. Will they take away his SSI? Is that $2,000 limit apply?
That $2,000 limit does not apply. So when regular Social Security, whether it's as a disabled adult child or for yourself, they don't care if you have millions of dollars. It's an earned benefit. And your child is going to receive that earned benefit based on your earnings, that you earned that benefit. So they don't care what he has in assets, and they will care if he works and makes too much money. The limit, and let me go ahead and tell you what the limit is for earnings, and it's much higher than the SSI. So earnings limit is $1,550 a month. So if they're a disabled child and they're making $600, no big deal. Making $1,000, no big deal. Okay? But it would affect their SSI, but not their benefit as a disabled adult child.
Thank you, that changes a lot for our thinking.
I bet it does.
And also with that, when I was looking at the scale, when I was reading Social Security, when they do that estimate from 62 to 67 and 70, they also, I think, clarified that's assuming I'm still working and making what I'm making now.
Correct. So when you get your statements, I told you that the statements are good statements to use as planning tools. Remember, I said that. Because it really does give you an idea. But if the windfall applies to you, then you know you're going to get half of that. But another time that it's not always accurate is if, let's say you retire at 55, and they're going to use your highest 35 years of earnings, and you get the statement, it says that at 62, you're going to get X amount of dollars, assuming you're going to work for those next 7 years making X. So in that case, your estimate is inflated. Now, they used to have a tool on Social Security's website, and I always shared it with everybody to go online and use this tool, and they took it away. I don't know why. They don't ever ask me what they should do and not do. They just took it away. So I can't tell you how to go about it, but I will tell you how you will keep up with it. Remember, I encouraged everyone in this room to get your statement on an annual basis. So your earnings will eventually drop off. It'll be accurate. If you're only missing, if you retire at 58, it's not going to be that much different. If you retire at 55, it may make $100 a month difference. If you retire at 60, it's minimal, okay? But it is slightly inflated. I will. Thank you for asking that because I did not cover that.
This is a windfall question.
Okay?
Okay. If you already have your 40 credits and you have worked in a system, you have worked in teaching 30 to 32 years, but only 10 of those years were with a system that did not pay into Social Security. Okay. And now you're in a system that does. I want to know, and I know you said there's a calculator on the website, but I don't know if the 90% factor applies. I'm really confused and I want to know.
Okay. So this is a great question. So the question is, I have worked and paid into Social Security under a TRS system and worked and not paid into Social Security under a TRS system. So I have both. Okay? So I said take 50%. Okay? Take 50%. But there is a maximum amount that it could be. The maximum amount of reduction it could be, if you turn 62 this year, it's $557. So if my Social Security check was going to be $1,200, and I'm saying, or let's make it $1,500, I'm saying it will only be $750. That's not an accurate statement. The reduction would only be $557. That's the maximum amount of reduction. So the calculator will do it for you, so you don't have to, do all the math and stuff, but you have to put all the numbers in. So I would say take half of what's on your Social Security statement. That's a good ballpark. It really is a good ballpark number. But don't subtract more than $557.
But you also mentioned if you worked like till you were 67 or 70, that changed the calculation.
Yes, if you're still working and not receiving your TRS pension because you're still working for the school system, then you could receive the full amount. But the moment you retire under TRS, it would stop. Okay? Now, if you're working someplace else, Vicki decides that she wants to be that Walmart greeter, and she's working for Walmart at 62, Windfall still applies. Even if she was 67, the Windfall still applies because she is receiving her TRS pension. Okay? I want to make sure everybody's clear on that. Working someplace else does not help. Okay? Did I get your question answered, Vicki?
I'll have to go to the calculator and see.
Try. And if you go in person to a Social Security office, they can do it for you. But then you have to go to a Social Security office. So.
My question is, at the beginning, you said go on Social Security and get your statement. My question is, my deceased husband, can I go on there and get his statement?
I would like to, the question is, can I get somebody else's statement if they're deceased? And you would think you would be able to, but the answer is no. So, but I will give you an idea though. Did at your husband's death, did you receive the burial payment? If you call Social Security, they should be able to tell you how much the Social Security would be because there's a record already established. Or if you go to the Social Security office, be sure you make an appointment and you can sit down and talk to them about survivor benefits. And they'll be able to tell you. I wish that it was easy enough that you could get his record. If you have anything was he drawn Social Security when he died by chance? Okay. So it's basically, you're going to have to go that route. Okay? Okay.
The question is, if you were previously in an educational system that did not pay into Social Security and you move over to one that does, once you rack up the 40 credits, does the WP calculation go away at that point for you?
No, the only time that the question is, if I get my 40 credits because I'm working under a system where I'm paying into Social Security, does that eliminate the windfall? And the answer is no, unless you have 30 years of substantial earnings under Social Security. So if you worked, let's say 20 years under the system that's paying into Social Security at a substantial level, and then you had 10 years after that or before that, before you went to work for the school system, then it depends. And I'll use myself as an example. Y'all know I had 29 years of zeros, but I have my 40 credits. And I've been working now I retired. I was very fortunate to retire at a young age. I have paid into Social Security now for 25 years of substantial earnings. So I have the windfall still, but the windfall is not as big because I have 25 years of substantial earnings. So it does adjust depending on how many years, okay? Y'all know more about me than you ever wanted to know. I'm so sorry.
Cindy, we have a question back here.
Yeah, just for clarity, you used the windfall exception and then you used the government pension offset. Are they identical?
They're totally different, totally different. So I could eliminate the government pension offset. I could eliminate that by working on and paying into Social Security for the last 5 years I'm under TRS, but the windfall could still apply to my own. So in the example that you have, you working now, paying into the system for 20 years or however many years before you retire, if this is your lovely wife next to you, if you married up, she has a bigger Social Security than you have, then the government pension offset wouldn't apply to you, but the windfall still would apply to you, okay? Sorry, I had to use you as an example because you just asked me the question. Yeah, totally different, totally different. Anything else we got? Yes?
Another question about the taking, like if I'm working beyond retirement and not taking the teacher retirement, when I do take my Social Security, is it reduced any for taking that, say from 67?
No. So are you working under TRS right now?
Yes.
Do you pay into Social Security? Okay, so you turn 67 or your full retirement age, you receive your full Social Security unreduced. No windfall, no nothing. You start your TRS at 68 years old, the windfall applies. It does go down. It does go down because the windfall, but not because you received those bigger checks. Okay? Does that make sense? That's what you were asking, wasn't it? Windfall still applies.
You should take it if you can.
Absolutely. Anybody in this room that loves your job and you're still working at your full retirement age, you start that Social Security. You don't try to make it bigger because the windfall doesn't apply to your bigger Social Security amount. It applies to your full amount. So you go ahead and take your Social Security if you're still working and not receiving your TRS pension. So you can get that bigger check. And you can take Vicki to a nice dinner, okay?
If you do take Social Security before you retire, do you also have to take Medicare?
If you take Social Security when you are 62 and you turn, is that what you're asking?
If you take your Social Security while you're still working,
Oh.
do you also have to sign up for Medicare, or can you keep your health care?
You can still keep your health care. The question is, I turned full retirement age. I'm not receiving my TRS pension, but I can have unlimited earnings. I'm receiving my Social Security. Do I have to take Medicare? And the answer is, when you start your Social Security, you're automatically enrolled in Medicare A, which is inpatient care in the hospital, and it is free. You do not get rid of your health insurance through work. It remains primary. Medicare A would be secondary to it. So if you went to the hospital, your state health insurance would pay the hospital bill. Medicare would pick up the rest of it. You would not file what is called Part B of Medicare, which is the doctor's part of Medicare that costs $174 a month. You wouldn't file for it because it doesn't make sense, because they would not pay. They would only pay secondary, so it would not make sense. But you do not have to take Medicare, but you're automatically enrolled in Medicare A. No choice, no choice.
Do you know if there is an option to decline Medicare Part A?
There is no option. Once you start Social Security, you have no option in not taking Medicare A. And for anybody that has an HSA, a health savings account.
That's why I'm asking.
Yeah, when you have an HSA, you cannot have Medicare and contribute to an HSA. And personally, I believe that legislation needs to be passed to allow you to decline it for HSA. But nothing has ever been introduced. And I keep track of all legislation, and there's never been anything introduced to eliminate that. So if I'm talking to someone that is reaching 65 or about to file for Social Security, and they're working, they just want to go ahead and start Social Security, I always ask them, do you have an HSA? Because you need to stop contributing to it. Otherwise, you're going to have a penalty from IRS. Not from Social Security, but from IRS. It's an IRS law, not a Social Security law. And speaking of laws, there are a couple of bills pending right now to eliminate the windfall elimination provision and the government pension offset. And I wish all the unions and the TRS systems throughout the United States would get very strong and lobby real hard to get that passed, but it has not passed. So there's a lot of school systems that, like in Texas and California, none of them pay into Social Security. In Georgia, there's a little bit of both,